You are on the platform. We're going to change topic now. And a theme is emerging, certainly on my show, and I know on the platform, and indeed in other media, a theme about the apparently ever more rapid collapse of the craziness around climate change and increasing calls for this country to abandon the Paris Climate Accord, which puts onerous demands on New Zealand to reduce its carbon emissions, even though that will make not a blind bit of difference, to what we're not sure is even man-made climate change, which isn't global warming anymore, because that didn't really work as a theory. The government has just announced new targets, revised downwards targets, for a reduction of methane emissions for New Zealand. The reduction has been welcomed by the farming industry. But now the farming industry is saying the science is skew and we're already net zero. One of the people leading the charge on this on behalf of Groundswell is Owen Jennings. He's a former president of Federated Farmers, and he joins us now. Owen, lovely to talk to you again. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Sean. Thank you.
Look, just talk us through this. While the government, I think, is... Actually, I think the government's sort of caught because of our international obligations. We're clearly winding back some of the craziness of the climate change agenda. But you're arguing that the science says, even if we didn't, we're already in some sectors net zero?
Absolutely. And the figures are quite clear. They're not our figures, they're internationally accepted figures. The first point we would make is that New Zealand's ruminant emissions, which come from our sheep and cattle, have been steadily reducing, in fact, way back to about 2005, but particularly since 2015. And what that means, and this is not readily understood, is that the pool of methane in the atmosphere coming from our stock is reducing in size. There is more methane disappearing out of the atmosphere than is entering. And the effect of that, and you don't have to think too hard about it, is that New Zealand farmers are actually contributing to cooling of the atmosphere, not warming it. And yet the official Ministry for the Environment and government figures say we're responsible for half New Zealand's warming. I mean, it is that plain, it is also that stupid.
What about carbon? Are they two different things or not?
Well, what they do with methane is they convert it into a carbon equivalent or a CO2 equivalent.
Hang on. Do you mean they scientifically or chemically alter it?
No, they calculate the warming effect of methane as opposed to the warming effect of CO2. So there's a reasonably widely accepted set of numbers that are applied that allows methane to be compared on a warming basis with CO2. But those figures are widely disputed from the point of view that there's no accuracy in any of these numbers. They all have huge plus minus kind of variables around them. But we're content with people saying methane is much more effective at warming than CO2. It's just that we want all of the facts to be taken into consideration. For example, on any farm in New Zealand, you cannot have an emission of methane without cows and sheep eating grass that has been created by photosynthesis, and photosynthesis uses CO2 and sunlight and moisture. So we want, New Zealand farmers want that to be netted off their outputs. At the moment, you simply can't have methane without CO2 being used. Yet the official position is that
They're
the
separate.
CO2 we use every day is not recognised.
Jesus.
It's that stupid. The fact that you can't have methane emissions from cows and sheep without CO2 being used in the process. And if you look at the numbers, they're quite a revelation. We're using a significant amount of CO2 every day during sunlight to make grass that gets used to feed the cows and sheep that make the methane. So you would think that any kind of position of justice and fairness would say, we'll net that off. And what's quite interesting about this particular point, Sean, is that the IPCC and the world authorities on this matter look at human breath, the fact that we're breathing out CO2, and they say, well, yes, there's quite a lot of CO2 going into the atmosphere from the 8.2 billion people around the planet, but we don't count that because it's part of a carbon cycle. Humans eat greens and eat meat that's created by greens. Therefore, there's a closed cycle. Excuse me? What about cows and sheep that eat grass? I mean, we are asking for consistency. We're saying if it's good enough for humans not to be counted, it should be good enough not to count sheep and cattle who use the same carbon cycle.
I hear you. I hear you absolutely, Owen. Owen, really, and I was just sitting there listening to you and how we calculate this and what the rules are. This has now descended into a Kafkaesque satire of bureaucracy and make-work schemes. With actually, it's so far removed from the reality of the scientific world, it almost beggars belief.
There's a saying that you and I would have used many times, follow the money. It's about money, it's about position, it's about pride. Unfortunately, we've gone down a one-way street without looking at the signs, and we've really got ourselves in a mess. What New Zealand should have done, alongside Australia, Brazil, Argentina and Ireland, similar countries, right at the very outset, back in the 1990s when the IPCC was gaining its power and position, was sit down and say, ruminant methane is different to all other emissions in that it requires the use of a greenhouse gas to produce it. There's only rice growing and ruminant methane that fit into that category. All other greenhouse gas emissions are in a different category that don't use a greenhouse gas in their process. So that's where we made a mistake. We merely trotted over to Europe, to the IPCC meetings, and said, yes, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll agree. Now,
we were too busy being woke, Owen. That was the problem.
We can have that fight.